The afternoon sun poured in through the grand windows of the Hensley estate, illuminating a corridor filled with the faint echo of string music from below. Spencer felt beads of sweat forming at his temples as he climbed a polished wooden staircase. The mansion, an opulent property in Oak Park, buzzed with guests celebrating the wedding reception of a local family friend. But there was something off in the air, something that stirred an uneasy feeling in the pit of Spencer's stomach. At first, he dismissed his tension as run-off-the-mill social anxiety. He and his wife, Lauren, had arrived together just an hour ago. She'd been whisked off to greet old acquaintances, while Spencer was left behind to admire the architecture of this sprawling home. It was a convenient excuse he had no real desire for small talk today. A strange restlessness propelled him to wander the upstairs, away from the lively chatter and clinking glasses. As he paused at the top of the stairway, he heard music drifting from the ballroom below, violins weaving through a classical piece. But over that refined melody, there came another sound, a muffled voice, possibly two, speaking in hushed but urgent tones. The hair on Spencer's neck bristled. He took slow, tentative steps down a dimly lit hallway lined with framed paintings of gardens and vineyards. Each painting looked peaceful, yet he sensed no tranquility. He turned a corner and found himself near an open doorway, leading into a small lounge or sitting room. The drapes were drawn, allowing only slivers of sunlight to pierce through. And in that half-lit space, he saw them. Lauren stood with her back partially turned to the door, wearing a soft, rose-colored dress that hugged her figure. Leaning into her personal space was Malcolm, an old classmate from Oak Park, someone Spencer had met only briefly, but never truly gotten to know. The two were entirely absorbed in each other. Spencer couldn't make out their words, but there was no mistaking the tension in the air. A single step forward granted Spencer an even clearer view. Malcolm's hand lingered on Lauren's arm, sliding down to encircle her wrist in a way that felt too intimate for polite conversation. Then Lauren turned, allowing Spencer to see her expression. It wasn't the casual smile she wore for acquaintances. It was confusion, longing something deep and unsettling. Spencer's heart hammered so loudly he almost thought they'd hear it. He clutched his phone and realized too late that he'd lifted it, unconsciously trying to snap a picture or a video. Whether out of panic or shock, his grip failed. The phone slipped from his hand and smacked onto the hallway's rug, the thud barely muted but loud enough to draw Malcolm's attention. For a split second, Spencer and Malcolm locked eyes. Malcolm's face registered alarm, then settled into a smooth, arrogant calm. Lauren spun around, her complexion going ashen. Spencer's chest tightened. He stepped backward, feeling the walls close in on him. The corridor felt narrower than before, every painting on the wall seeming to watch this disastrous moment unfold. He didn't wait for them to speak. He didn't call out Lauren's name. He simply scooped up his phone in a daze and pivoted, striding back the way he had come. All the while, he could hear the low hum of the wedding celebration drifting up from downstairs, a mocking soundtrack to his shock. As he descended the stairs, the radiant sunlight that had once seemed so cheerful now felt glaring and harsh. People milled about in the foyer, too caught up in the festivities to notice Spencer's stricken expression. He spotted a server offering flutes of champagne, and for a heartbeat he considered grabbing one to steady his nerves. But he kept moving, each step echoing hollowly against the marble floor. His mind reeled with questions, but none made sense. How could Lauren, his wife, be standing so intimately with Malcolm? Had he misread the situation? The raw look of guilt on her face said otherwise. Each second replayed in his head like frames of a film he wished he could burn. When Spencer reached the front door, he shoved it open and stepped into the blinding daylight. The gentle autumn breeze did nothing to clear the haze clouding his thoughts. He forced himself to keep walking, away from the bustle, away from the music, away from that gut-wrenching scene upstairs. It was too surreal, too sudden. He slipped out onto the driveway where cars lined up behind the valet station. He felt weightless, as if part of him had been shredded back in that hallway. Without a word, he strode toward the street, leaving behind the gilded estate and leaving readers to wonder, how had everything gone so wrong? 3 years earlier, the early springtime sun shone warmly on Atlanta, announcing another busy day at the Georgia Tech campus. Spencer stepped out of an airport taxi, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and inhaled the city air. It carried a blend of car exhaust, budding magnolias, and that faint tinge of humidity. He'd been away for nearly 2 years serving in the Army. Now, with his active duty concluded, he was back to finish what he'd started, a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. He felt a pang of nostalgia moving across the familiar quad, weaving among students chatting, texting, rushing to lectures. Everything seemed both new and old at once. Miles, a college buddy who'd kept in touch while Spencer was deployed, had helped secure him a small off-campus apartment. Spencer would settle in later first. He had a class to attend. Stepping into the lecture hall for a required philosophy course, Spencer surveyed rows of seats filling up. The professor, Dr. Hoffman, was an animated figure setting up slides on the projector. Students chattered about last weekend's basketball game or upcoming exams. Spencer found a seat near the middle, not too conspicuous, and prepared to take notes. A moment later, a woman slid into the adjacent seat, her dark hair falling loosely around her shoulders. She wore a casual blouse and jeans, her eyes scanning the syllabus in her hand. She looked up and smiled politely at Spencer. "Hey, do you know if we need the textbook today?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of curiosity. Spencer shrugged slightly. "I'm new here again, actually. Name's Spencer. Just got back from deployment." Her eyes lit up. "Lauren, nice to meet you." Then she lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Dr. Hoffman's known for letting students off easy on the first day, so maybe we're safe." They exchanged a grin, and something in that moment clicked. Lauren had an ease and warmth that felt like a breath of fresh air. Throughout the lecture, they whispered small jokes about Hoffman's dramatic gestures, forming an instant camaraderie. By the time class ended, Spencer found himself wondering if he could gather the courage to ask for her phone number, something he wasn't usually nervous about. But for some reason, with Lauren, he felt the stakes were higher. Outside, the campus green looked particularly vibrant under the midday sun. Students sprawled out on blankets or strolled to the dining hall. Spencer and Lauren ambled slowly, still chatting about trivial things: her childhood in Oak Park, his experience in the Army, her fascination with design, his interest in building mechanical systems. "You should see my sketches," she offered at one point, a shy smile forming on her lips. "I'm studying interior design, but sometimes I think I should have gone for architecture." "Well, I wouldn't mind that," Spencer said, nodding. "I'm always looking at how things function, but I need someone to show me how they should look." Lauren laughed. "We might be a perfect match then." He didn't know if she meant academically or more than that, but the comment lingered in his mind as they parted ways. They exchanged numbers in the most natural, unforced way. No awkwardness, just mutual intrigue. That night, Spencer found himself drafting a text to her, a simple, "Hey, want to grab coffee tomorrow?" It took him almost half an hour to settle on something that sounded casual yet enthusiastic. When Lauren replied, "Sure, meet at 9:30, Spencer felt a flutter he hadn't experienced in a long time. He realized that after everything he'd been through in the military discipline, structure, the constant readiness life back in college might hold a different kind of challenge. A thrilling, heart-racing one. Little did he know that this was the beginning of an emotional whirlwind, one that would eventually lead them to marry, build a life together, and believe their love was rock solid. A love that, in the not-so-distant future, would stand on the brink of collapse in a hallway at an elegant Oak Park estate. A few weeks later, warm spring rain fell softly against the windows of Miles's apartment, where Spencer and Lauren found themselves attending a small weekend get-together. Miles, ever the social host, had insisted that Spencer bring the lovely Lauren so they could all properly meet. The living room was filled with the scent of homemade chili and the low murmur of conversation from fellow students, some from the design department, others from engineering. Lauren, dressed in a light sweater and jeans, wandered around admiring Miles's rather haphazard decor. The space was a mismatch of second-hand couches, a cluttered coffee table strewn with textbooks, and a single poster of a rock band Miles adored. Yet somehow, Lauren's keen sense of design made her appreciate the place's quirky charm. Spencer hovered nearby, introducing her to a few classmates. She mingled effortlessly, her friendly smile putting people at ease. Miles caught Spencer's eye across the room and gave a subtle thumbs up, like he was silently approving Spencer's new relationship. Spencer responded with a small nod, half embarrassed, half proud. Eventually, Lauren and Spencer escaped the buzz of the group, settling into a quieter corner by a tall standing lamp whose light created a cozy pocket in the otherwise dim room. They talked about classes, professors, the projects piling up. Conversation flowed into more personal territory. Lauren hesitated for a moment, biting her lip. "Can I be honest? I've never slept with anyone before," she admitted, her cheeks pinking slightly. "Not because I think it's wrong, I just always told myself I'd only do it with someone I trust completely." Spencer, taken aback by her candor, gently placed a hand over hers. "I respect that," he said, meeting her gaze. "I won't push you into anything you're not ready for." His calm acceptance seemed to ease her tension. They finished the evening huddled together, forgetting the clamor of the party around them. By the time Spencer walked her back to her dorm later that night, the rain had stopped, leaving the sidewalks glistening under streetlights. They strolled arm in arm, exchanging soft laughter. A couple of weeks later, the moment they'd both been dancing around arrived. After a cozy dinner at Spencer's apartment spaghetti, some cheap red wine, and Frank Sinatra crooning through Spencer's old speakers, Lauren felt a surge of closeness, as though this was the right place and the right time. Nervous energy coiled in her stomach, but the warmth of Spencer's smile calmed her. They kissed slowly, exploring each other's signals until the tension melted into mutual understanding. What followed was tender and unhurried, more about emotional connection than anything else. Lauren trusted Spencer, and in that trust, she discovered intimacy wasn't just physical, it was two souls daring to share vulnerabilities. She later confided that she'd never felt safer or more cherished. But one topic that consistently came up in their deeper talks was Lauren's stance on infidelity. Perhaps it stemmed from witnessing her father's affair years ago, something Lauren only mentioned in passing, but it shaped her outlook on marriage and loyalty. "I told myself," she once whispered to Spencer in the quiet of the night, "if my husband ever cheats, I'll leave. No second chances." Spencer recalled the fierce look in her eyes. It was the one topic on which she never wavered. Ironically, that conviction only solidified Spencer's own devotion. He vowed to himself that he would always remain faithful. Their love, he believed, was strong enough to withstand the usual pitfalls of relationships. They were teammates, confidants, lovers. They had the future in the palm of their hands, and so the foundation of their life together was laid brick by brick of trust, sprinkled with the excitement of youthful ambition. Yet hidden deep beneath the bedrock was the knowledge that any betrayal, no matter how small, could rupture everything. He just never imagined the betrayal would someday come from the person who despised it the most, Lauren. Lauren's smile shone brighter than the fairy lights strung along the backyard fence. Their wedding reception wasn't extravagant, just close friends and family gathered under a canopy on a breezy summer evening in Atlanta. Spencer's mother fussed over the dessert table, making sure the small wedding cake was perfectly aligned. Miles offered a heartfelt toast that made everyone laugh about Spencer's army discipline meeting Lauren's designer's eye. When Lauren and Spencer slow danced to an old jazz ballad, the world seemed to fade around them. She rested her head on his shoulder, eyes closed, contentment radiating in the gentle press of her body against his. In that moment, Spencer felt an overwhelming certainty. They were each other's forever. In the year following the wedding, they bought a modest condo near Midtown. While Spencer threw himself into a new engineering position at a local firm, Lauren found a job at a boutique interior design company. Their schedules were hectic, but somehow they carved out weekends for grocery runs, Netflix marathons, and spontaneous drives along the Georgia countryside. Their home took shape with Lauren's flair for decor soft neutral tones, contemporary art prints, and furniture that balanced comfort with sophistication. Amid the everyday bustle, they still found time to nurture romance. There were Friday date night traditions, a shared love of cooking, and supportive phone calls whenever Spencer traveled for work. This was also when he met Donovan, his new boss a sharp-eyed manager known for throwing last-minute assignments at unsuspecting employees. "Spencer," Donovan remarked one afternoon, "I'm impressed by your ability to adapt. Came from the Army, huh? That might be perfect for these urgent gigs." Spencer chuckled politely, not realizing how often that adaptability would be tested. One day at the condo, Lauren's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She answered, only to discover it was from Oak Park's high school alumni committee, inviting her to a 10-year reunion. She looked over at Spencer, who was flipping through a blueprint. "Hey," she said, "they want me at some alumni weekend. Big celebration back in Oak Park." Spencer glanced up with a supportive grin. "You should go. Might be fun to see old friends." Lauren nodded, but a subtle hesitation crossed her features. She hadn't mentioned any tension or regrets from high school in a while. Oak Park was where she first met Malcolm, though she'd rarely spoken about him specifically. Even so, nothing seemed alarming at the time. That evening, over homemade pizza, they discussed the logistics of Lauren's trip. Spencer might have to fly to Jacksonville for a project Donovan had mentioned. They concluded that if schedules clashed, Lauren would just go solo. It felt perfectly normal they trusted each other after all, and so the next few weeks rolled on in that pleasant rhythm. They worked, they laughed at silly inside jokes, they teased each other while folding laundry. Anyone looking from the outside would have seen an enviably steady marriage. Conflict was minimal, love was abundant. Yet if one looked closer, there were tiny undercurrents. Spencer had begun traveling more often for work, leaving Lauren alone for days at a time. She never complained explicitly, but she sometimes wore a faint restlessness. Once or twice, he noticed her scrolling through old photos on social media pictures from Oak Park High, including a snapshot of her and a group of classmates at prom. Malcolm was in that group, an arm draped casually around Lauren's shoulder. Whenever Spencer asked about those days, Lauren brushed it off. "We were kids. It was nothing significant." Her dismissive tone was reassuring enough for the moment. And so, Chapter 4 comes to a close on a relatively peaceful note, with wedding vows still fresh in the couple's memory and their life together humming along. There was only a small flicker of unease about the upcoming reunion, quickly pushed aside by daily routines. After all, with a love as sincere as theirs, what could possibly go wrong? Yet, in the not-too-distant future, that reunion in Oak Park would mark the beginning of the end of their blissful oblivion, unraveling everything they'd built. For now, though, they remained blissfully unaware, standing on the brink of a storm they never saw coming. Lauren stood by the kitchen counter, absently stirring sweetener into her morning coffee. Outside the window, Atlanta's sky was a soft gray, hinting at an early spring rain. She glanced at her phone, rereading the high school reunion invitation from Oak Park. 10 years had passed in a blink, and she wasn't quite sure she wanted to revisit those memories. Just then, Spencer walked in, buttoning the cuff of his dress shirt. His expression brightened briefly when he saw her. "Morning," he greeted. "You're up early." "Yeah," Lauren replied, sipping her coffee. "I got this invite from my old high school. They're throwing a reunion next weekend, in Oak Park." Spencer paused, curiosity lighting his eyes. "Oak Park, that's where you grew up, right?" He set a hand gently on her shoulder. "Sounds fun. You should go." Lauren hesitated. "I'm not sure. It'd mean flying back for a few days, sorting out schedules, plus you're busy." Spencer's phone buzzed on the counter, cutting her off. The screen displayed Donovan. Spencer grimaced apologetically and answered, stepping aside. She could hear bits of his conversation. "Yeah, Donovan, I can handle that. Jacksonville? Sure. Short notice, but I'll make it work." He hung up and turned to Lauren, exhaling in mild frustration. "I have to leave for Jacksonville on Monday. Donovan wants me to manage some on-site issues with a new client." He paused, noticing Lauren's uncertain look. "You know what? You should still go to that reunion. No reason to hang around here while I'm gone." Lauren offered a small smile. "Maybe. I just feel weird traveling alone like that." "It's just a few days," he reassured her. "Besides, your classmates would probably love to see you." After breakfast, she mulled it over. Life had been peaceful enough, maybe too peaceful. A reunion could be a harmless detour from routine. By lunchtime, she'd booked a flight to Chicago, followed by a short drive to Oak Park. A week later, Lauren arrived in Oak Park, stepping off the commuter train onto familiar territory. The early afternoon sun reflected on the polished station floors. Outside, the suburban streets were lined with budding trees and neat sidewalks. It felt both nostalgic and oddly distant. She dropped her suitcase at a modest bed-and breakfast near the old town center. The reunion events would start that evening at a local banquet hall, cocktails, name tags, and all the usual high school gossip. Part of her was excited to see old faces, teachers who once scolded her for late homework, friends who'd gone off to different parts of the country. But she couldn't shake a quiet sense of foreboding. Perhaps it was hearing the name Oak Park again after so long, or the recollection of certain memories she'd tried to bury, like her brief teenage romance with Malcolm. They'd dated only a short time, and she'd refused to go further with him physically, believing the relationship was too shallow. They broke up after graduation, and she'd never looked back. She didn't expect to run into him now, a whole decade later. For all she knew, he lived on the other side of the world. So she pushed those thoughts aside and resolved to enjoy the evening. The reunion started at 6. By the time Lauren arrived at the banquet hall in a simple black dress and a light jacket, the parking lot was half full. She checked in at a welcome table, slapped on a name tag reading Lauren Carter, class of 20, and ventured inside. Balloon arches, a DJ mixing low-key pop tunes, round tables decked with school colors, every typical high school reunion cliché was there. She spotted a few classmates, exchanged friendly waves and small talk. The tension in her chest slowly eased. The atmosphere was upbeat, normal. Yet halfway through a conversation about real estate trends with an old friend, she spotted a figure across the room. He was taller than she remembered, leaning casually against the bar in a sharp blazer. A fleeting thought crossed her mind. Could that be Malcolm? And indeed, when he turned, Lauren's heart gave a startled jolt. It was him. She saw recognition flicker in his gaze. He smiled polite, but with an undertone of intrigue. Her friend kept talking, but Lauren barely caught another word. Something was shifting in the air, some feeling she hadn't anticipated. She inhaled, tried to steady herself. "Lauren?" her friend asked, noticing her distraction. She forced a laugh. "Sorry, guess I'm a bit overwhelmed by all the faces," she said, deflecting. But really, her thoughts had narrowed to one face in particular. The evening wore on. She circled the room, greeting old classmates, chuckling at yearbook photos pinned on display boards. Meanwhile, a quiet curiosity grew about what Malcolm had been doing all these years, and if there was any reason for them to speak. After all, Spencer was in Jacksonville, working late nights for Donovan. This was just a harmless reunion, right? Unbeknownst to her, a silent wind was picking up, bringing subtle turbulence like storm clouds gathering before a downpour, and Malcolm's arrival in her line of sight was merely the first crack of thunder. By 9 that evening, the banquet hall's main lights dimmed, colored spotlights swinging lazily over the dance floor. People were more relaxed. Some sipped too many cocktails, others dissolved into fits of nostalgia-laced laughter. Lauren found herself standing near a display of old class photos when a voice chimed behind her. "Lauren Carter," it said, laced with a friendly, self-assured tone. "I was hoping I'd see you here." She turned to face Malcolm, who wore a crisp blazer over a fitted shirt, exuding a confidence he hadn't possessed in high school. His hair was neatly groomed, and a hint of expensive cologne teased her senses. He extended his hand with a warm smile that might have seemed genuine, but Lauren noticed something else beneath it: curiosity, perhaps even a flicker of triumph. "Malcolm," she greeted, mustering a polite smile. She accepted his handshake, noticing how he held on just a fraction too long before letting go. "It's been a while." Indeed it has. He glanced at the photos taped up on a nearby board, pointing at a snapshot of them in junior year. She was wearing a basketball cheer uniform. He had an arm slung around her shoulders. "We were just kids, huh?" Lauren nodded, trying to keep her voice light. "Kids with wild ambitions. You look different now. Good different." He chuckled. "I've been busy, moved around a bit, tried a few ventures." He paused, letting silence build before continuing. But that's probably not as interesting as your story. Interior design, was it? And you married that guy, Spencer, right? Lauren felt a slight heat creep up her neck. She nodded. He's in engineering. Couldn't make it tonight. Work. Malcolm gave a sympathetic hum, but there was an edge to it. I remember you telling me once you'd never marry someone boring. He winked, and her cheeks grew warmer, unsure how to interpret that remark. They chatted about inconsequential topics. Who moved where, who had kids, who got divorced. Malcolm mentioned a recent project in consulting, though he didn't elaborate. He spoke with the easy flair of someone used to impressing others, at least that's how it felt to Lauren. A slow song started playing, and couples drifted toward the dance floor. Malcolm's lips curved into a friendly grin. Want to dance, for old time's sake? Her stomach fluttered. She told herself it was just the nerves of seeing an old flame. Yet something in his voice unsettled her. She managed a polite refusal. I might sit this one out. I'm a bit tired from traveling. He shrugged as if unbothered. No problem. I'll hold you to a dance later, though. His gaze lingered before he slipped back into the crowd. For the next hour, Lauren wandered between acquaintances, nibbling on appetizers, trying to brush off the odd tension Malcolm had awakened. He's just an old friend, she repeated in her head. But that flutter didn't subside. A part of her was undeniably curious. How had he changed? Was he successful, or just acting the part? Near midnight, the event began winding down. A few folks rallied for an after-party, but Lauren declined, deciding she needed rest at her bed and breakfast. As she left, she couldn't resist a parting glance across the room. Malcolm was there, leaning casually against a table, texting on his phone. He looked up as if sensing her gaze, offering a brief smile, but didn't approach. Stepping into the cool night air, Lauren released a breath she'd been holding. She felt relieved to be away from the swirling memories and Malcolm's unsettling presence. Still, the question churned. Why did I react so strongly to him? She convinced herself it was nostalgia, nothing more. Yet somewhere deep inside, the seeds of doubt and excitement had been planted. Malcolm had returned to her world for the first time in a decade, and it seemed he had no intention of staying quietly in the background. Outside, the moon hid behind a thin veil of clouds, a silent witness to the cracks forming in Lauren's unsustainable conviction. The following night, the reunion's official program ended around 10, culminating in a nostalgic slideshow of old photos. Classmates swapped phone numbers and social media handles, promising to keep in touch. Feeling a bit spent, Lauren planned to head straight to her bed and breakfast. But as she made her way to the parking lot, a familiar voice called out, "Lauren!" Malcolm strode over, his car keys jingling in one hand. "You got a ride?" "I planned on calling a cab," she replied, glancing around. The lot was mostly empty. Apparently, many folks had left earlier or shared rides. Malcolm smiled, gesturing to a sleek silver sedan parked nearby. "Let me drop you off if you don't mind. It's late, and cabs around here can be a hassle." She hesitated, eyes flicking to her phone. Spencer had said he might call after wrapping up a meeting in Jacksonville. Still, refusing Malcolm's offer seemed more awkward than necessary. "Okay," she agreed softly. "Thanks." Inside the sedan, the leather seats felt cool against her legs. Soft jazz played on the radio. They pulled out of the parking lot, the streetlights casting fleeting shadows across the dashboard. Despite the gentle background music, a tension clung to the air like static electricity. Malcolm broke the silence with a reminiscent chuckle. "Remember senior year when we nearly skipped prom? We ended up going last minute." He paused. "You looked incredible that night." Lauren offered a small laugh. "I recall spending hours convincing myself I wouldn't go, then change my mind. You were the one who called me at midnight to talk about it." He flashed a grin. "We were stubborn kids, but I always admired that about you knowing what you wanted. Well," he added with a hint of mischief, "most of the time." She glanced out the window. "People change." He flicked on the turn signal. "They do, and sometimes they circle back into our lives unexpectedly. Ever wonder why that is?" His words felt loaded. "I guess it's just coincidence," she mumbled, deflecting. She checked her phone, no calls or messages from Spencer yet. When they reached her bed and breakfast, Malcolm shifted into park, but let the engine idle. She unbuckled her seatbelt. "Thanks for the ride," she began, ready to exit. But in that instant, he leaned closer, a sudden intensity in his eyes. "Lauren," he said quietly, I missed you. Strange, right? Didn't expect to feel anything." Before she could form a reply, he angled forward, pressing his lips to hers in a swift move. Her heart lurched. "This is wrong!" her mind screamed. She braced one hand against his shoulder, intending to push him away, but for a split second, she froze. Just then, her phone rang, shrill and urgent in the small space. She tore away from Malcolm, mind reeling, pulse hammering. Spencer's name glowed on the screen. "Hey," she answered, breath unsteady. "Spence?" He sounded tired. "I'm done for the night. Just wanted to check how your reunion's going. You okay, Lauren?" She swallowed hard, avoiding Malcolm's gaze. "Yeah, I'm back in my room already, about to sleep." A lie. But she couldn't bring herself to tell the truth. Her voice sounded higher than usual. "Everything's fine." Malcolm watched her with a faint smirk. He could see the conflict playing out on her face. After she hung up, he reached for her hand, but she snatched it away, finally regaining composure. "Malcolm, that was a mistake," she said, voice trembling. He didn't argue, just studied her expression. "Sure," he said casually, "if that's what you want to believe." She yanked the door handle, stepping out into the night. I need to go," she stammered. Slamming the car door, Lauren hurried inside the bed and breakfast, shame roiling in her gut. Behind her, Malcolm let out a low chuckle, as though satisfied with the seed of doubt he'd planted. He drove off, headlights cutting a path through the dark. Meanwhile, Lauren stood in the dim foyer, phone clutched to her chest, feeling a betrayal of her own making sink in. Once back in Atlanta, Lauren tried to shove the memory of that kiss with Malcolm into a locked box in her mind. The guilt gnawed at her, though, prompting an overcompensation at home. She greeted Spencer at the airport with enthusiastic hugs and peppered him with questions about Jacksonville. She insisted on cooking elaborate dinners, leaving affectionate notes by his laptop. Spencer, for his part, accepted her gestures but couldn't shake the sense something was off. He noticed her jump whenever her phone buzzed. He also noticed a slight hesitation in her eyes, like she was guarding a secret. But with no concrete evidence, he chalked it up to the stress of traveling and reunited life. One evening, they lounged on the living room couch, flipping between news channels, a half-eaten pizza on the coffee table. Lauren leaned her head on Spencer's shoulder, trying to bury herself in the comfort of his presence. He stroked her hair gently, still feeling that curious distance beneath the warmth. "You've been kind of restless," he ventured quietly. "Everything okay? Work? The reunion?" She forced a casual laugh. "I'm fine. The reunion was interesting. People changed so much." She avoided mentioning Malcolm or the pit of anxiety in her stomach. "Maybe I'm just tired, adjusting to being back." Spencer studied her for a moment, wanting to push further but thinking better of it. "All right," he said softly, pressing a light kiss to her forehead. "If you need to talk about anything, I'm here, okay?" "I know," she whispered. "Thanks." Later that week, while Spencer showered, Lauren sat at the kitchen table, tapping nervously on her phone. An unread message glowed from Malcolm. "We still have things to catch up on, Lauren. Don't pretend you've forgotten." Her throat tightened. She hovered over the delete option, reading it twice. She could almost sense his smug expression behind that text. The memory of his lips on hers sent a jolt through her half-guilt, half-unbidden thrill. "This has to stop," she told herself firmly. She deleted the message, determined to bury the entire episode. Then she set her phone face down, mustering a shaky breath. Little did she know that such attempts to stifle her guilt and hide the truth would only fuel the tension, creating a fragile calm that could shatter at any moment. For now, Spencer was none the wiser, and Lauren convinced herself that one slip wouldn't unravel their entire marriage. But in the back of her mind, a small, persistent voice whispered that perhaps it already had like a crack in glass, hairline thin yet destined to spread. Spencer was in the living room, laptop balanced on his knees when Donovan's call came through. "Chicago?" Spencer repeated, rubbing his temple. "Sure, Donovan. I can head out next week. Let me double-check flights." Lauren, who had been sorting laundry nearby, lifted her gaze. "You're traveling again?" Spencer shrugged. "Client wants an on-site consultation. Could be 2 or 3 days, maybe 4. Donovan's not exactly sure yet." A thoughtful look flitted across Lauren's face. Things between them had improved slightly since the reunion fiasco in Oak Park, at least on the surface. Yet guilt still lingered in her mind. Could this be a chance to keep herself from dwelling on Malcolm? She cleared her throat softly. "I could join you," she suggested. "You'll have meetings, but I could explore Chicago's design district. Maybe check out some home decor shops for new ideas." Spencer's expression brightened. "Really, that might be nice. We can grab dinner after my work stuff." That evening, Lauren booked her own ticket and a hotel reservation that matched Spencer's schedule. She told herself it was simply a mini vacation, a way to refocus on her marriage. But a murmur of anxiety tugged at her mind. Malcolm had once mentioned living in Chicago for business. Surely he wasn't still there, she thought. It's a big city anyway. 2 days later, they flew into O'Hare under overcast skies. A cool spring breeze greeted them outside baggage claim. Spencer rented a compact sedan, and they navigated through traffic to a downtown hotel. Glassy skyscrapers towered overhead, reflecting the gray sky. The hotel suite was modest but comfortable, with a view of bustling streets below. After settling in, they ventured out for a quick lunch at a cafe near the river. Spencer couldn't help smiling at how relaxed Lauren seemed. She chatted about new color palettes for their condo, some modern furniture pieces she'd been eyeing. It felt like old times almost. Next morning, Donovan's schedule kicked in. Spencer left early for the client's headquarters in a nearby business district. Lauren planned her day in the hotel lobby, sipping coffee and poring over local design magazines. She was determined to enjoy Chicago and put the Oak Park episode behind her. Just after 10, as she scrolled through her phone, it buzzed with an unknown number. Part of her froze. She hesitated, then answered. "Lauren," a male voice said smoothly. "Didn't expect you in my city." Her breath caught. "Malcolm." She glanced around as though he might materialize in the lobby. "How? How did you get my number?" He chuckled. "We used to have the same circle of old classmates, remember? Chicago's a small world if you keep your ear to the ground." Lauren's skin prickled. She stammered, "This is just a short trip with my husband. He's working." "Well," Malcolm replied, "I'm here too. Maybe we can catch up for lunch. Unless you're scared, of course." Those words, "unless you're scared," hit a nerve. She could hear the silent challenge. She closed her eyes, waging a private battle. "I should hang up," she thought. "I shouldn't let this happen." But the memory of Oak Park, that impulsive kiss, still hovered in her mind. Against her better judgment, she found herself whispering, "Fine, but just lunch. Nothing more." Malcolm sent her the address of a restaurant in a chic neighborhood, claiming he had a business lunch there anyway. Lauren told herself it was harmless, just a short meeting. She'd be home before Spencer even returned from his client site. Yet somewhere deep inside, she sensed a door was opening, one she might not be able to close again. By midday, Lauren arrived at an upscale brasserie near the Magnificent Mile. Through tall windows, she could see Malcolm at a corner table, casually dressed in a dark blazer, sipping iced water. He rose when she entered, flashing a confident smile that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. She slid into the seat across from him, exuding as much composure as possible. "So," she began, "what's this big business that brought you here?" Malcolm waved a hand dismissively. "Just a project I'm finalizing. Enough about me, tell me more about your life in Atlanta, about Spencer's job." Lauren tensed. Something about the way he said Spencer felt oddly dismissive. Yet she indulged in small talk, describing her design work, the condo, a new coffee table she'd been eyeing for their living room. Malcolm asked pointed questions, each one prying at her marriage's stability. She did her best to give bland answers. Lunch stretched longer than expected. Malcolm ordered an extra appetizer, offering it to Lauren with a playful grin. "Stay a bit. I rarely get to enjoy good conversation here." Outside, raindrops began to patter the windows, painting the street with watery reflections. Eventually, they left the restaurant. Malcolm insisted on giving her a ride since the weather had worsened. She hesitated, but stepping into a sudden downpour seemed worse, so she relented. The interior of his car felt oppressive, the windows fogging slightly from the humidity. "What's your plan now?" he asked, voice low, once they were on the road. Lauren fiddled with her coat sleeve. "Head back to the hotel. Spencer will finish soon. We have dinner reservations." Malcolm nodded. "I see. Must be nice playing the devoted wife," he said, half teasing. "And yet, you're here with me." She bristled. "That's uncalled for, Malcolm. This is just a ride." He shrugged, a slow smirk curving his lips. "Sure it is." They drove in tense silence, the rain hammering the windshield. When they reached the vicinity of her hotel, a flurry of horns blared. A traffic jam blocked the intersection. Malcolm cussed under his breath and turned down a side street. "Let me loop around," he said. But that side street was nearly deserted. He slowed, pulling up alongside a curb. "We'll wait it out," he said. Lauren's heart rate spiked, seeing the intent in his eyes. Before she could protest, he leaned in, brushing his hand along her arm. "We never finished what started back in Oak Park, did we?" She found herself locked in his gaze, fear and a twisted sense of longing colliding. "No, we shouldn't," she whispered, but her resolve trembled. Rain drummed overhead, sealing them in a cocoon of adrenaline and blurred gray light. Malcolm's touch grew insistent, and a surge of pent-up tension swept Lauren along. There, in the hush of that parked car, she crossed a line she could hardly believe she was crossing. The moment was frenzied, yet hushed, heated breaths, whispered confessions, and Lauren's mind spiraling between guilt and reckless desire. Afterward, she felt the weight of what had happened press down like a stone on her chest. She couldn't bring herself to meet Malcolm's satisfied gaze. Without speaking, he restarted the car, guiding them toward the main road. She stared out the rain-streaked window, her stomach churning. "You can drop me at the corner," she managed. I need a moment before going upstairs." As the car came to a halt, she opened the door, stepping onto the damp sidewalk. Malcolm leaned across the passenger seat, voice soft. "Lauren, don't overthink this. We'll talk soon." She didn't reply, slamming the car door behind her. A swirl of wind and drizzle battered her as she hurried to the hotel entrance. With each step, the reality set in. She'd betrayed Spencer in a way she once swore she never would. Spencer's day concluded earlier than planned. He left his meeting around mid-afternoon, satisfied that Donovan's crisis had been handled. Hopping into a taxi, he imagined surprising Lauren at the hotel, maybe catch her reading in the lobby or returning from a shopping spree. When he arrived at the suite, though, he found it empty. A note on the bedside table read, "Went out exploring. See you soon. Lauren." As the hours passed, a nagging worry crept into Spencer's mind. By 5 o'clock, Lauren hadn't returned. He tried calling her, but she answered with a rushed tone, claiming she was at a nearby mall. "I'm almost done shopping," she said. "I'll be back soon, okay?" Her voice sounded off, but he brushed it away. Maybe she was just tired from walking around the city. He sat in an armchair by the window, flipping through a local news channel on TV, but his focus drifted. The overcast sky outside mirrored his mood. Close to 6, he heard the door key card beep. Lauren entered, carrying a single small shopping bag. Her hair looked damp at the edges, and she seemed ruffled. At his questioning look, she forced a breezy smile. "It started raining, so I ducked into a cafe. Sorry I'm late." Spencer rose, scanning her as though searching for an unspoken truth. "You all right? You look winded." "I'm fine," she said too quickly, setting her bag aside. "Traffic was awful. I had to walk a few blocks." Spencer noticed her jacket was wrinkled, like she'd been in a hurry. He also noticed her eyes darting away from his. He pressed his lips together, uncertain whether to pry. "Well, as long as you're safe," he murmured. They had dinner reservations at a fusion restaurant around the corner. Despite their best attempts at normal conversation, an intangible tension crackled between them. Lauren laughed at the wrong times, fiddled with her fork, and avoided direct eye contact. Spencer felt her distance like a physical barrier. Halfway through the meal, he finally summoned the nerve to ask, "Everything going okay, really? You seem uneasy." She glanced up, swallowing a mouthful of food. "I'm just tired, that's all. Maybe the traveling and the weather got to me." She added a faint smile. "Nothing to worry about." Spencer let it drop, but a whisper in his mind told him something didn't add up. He recalled the moment she'd come through the hotel door, the faint scent of rain, or was there something else, like an unfamiliar cologne? Shaking the thought away, he forced a smile of his own. They clinked glasses in a half-hearted toast to finishing the work trip soon. The flicker of candlelight on their table revealed more than they admitted, Spencer's rising suspicion and Lauren's silent guilt. They flew back to Atlanta 2 days later, the tension between them unspoken, yet persistent. Spencer tried to be affectionate, wrapping an arm around Lauren in the plane, leaning his head toward hers. She responded with polite warmth, but he could sense her drifting in her own thoughts. At the Atlanta airport, their friend Miles happened to be waiting to pick up another acquaintance. He spotted them by the baggage carousel and walked over, grin wide. "Hey, strangers! Long time. How was Chicago?" Spencer paused. "Busy, but we got some time together. Right, Lauren?" She smiled, though it looked forced. "Yes, it was. Interesting." Miles gave them a curious glance, but said nothing more, quickly changing the subject to the new pizza place near their condo. Once they got home, Lauren sighed in relief at the familiar spacelight wood floors, a few framed travel photos on the walls. It felt safer than that Chicago suite, where her betrayal had taken root. Yet a part of her knew no place was truly safe from the guilt that gnawed at her. Spencer lugged the suitcases into the bedroom. As he unpacked, he broke the silence. "So we're invited to some event in Oak Park next month, right? Something with your old friends, family?" Lauren's heart jolted. She'd nearly forgotten that Malcolm had hinted about a family event. Yes, possibly," she managed. "But we don't have details yet." Spencer frowned thoughtfully. "Okay, just let me know. Donovan might throw more travel my way soon, but I'll do my best to go with you this time. Don't want you heading there alone again." She appreciated the sentiment, though it reminded her exactly why she was ashamed. She nodded, forcing a lighter tone. "We can talk about it later once we're settled." They fell into a routine over the next few days, but a quiet distance lingered like a shadow. Spencer, though trying to be patient, noticed she was more skittish around her phone. She'd tap out texts or delete messages quickly. Late at night, Lauren lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her rendezvous with Malcolm in that Chicago side street. Still, she reassured herself that maybe Spencer hadn't truly suspected anything. If she could just bury it deep, life might continue as before. But each small lie, each anxious glance at her phone, only tightened the knot in her stomach. One evening, while Spencer washed dishes, Lauren glanced at her phone to see a text from Malcolm. "Back in Chicago. Missed that spark already. Let's not wait too long to reconnect, Lauren." Her pulse thundered. She deleted it instantly, hands trembling. But the words felt branded in her mind. She glanced at Spencer's silhouette by the kitchen sink, longing to confide in him, to confess, to ask for forgiveness. But fear paralyzed her, and so the secret stayed locked away, festering. In the final hush of that night, Spencer fell asleep reading a technical manual, while Lauren stared out the window at the city lights. The horizon twinkled innocently, yet she felt as though the ground beneath her was on the verge of collapsing. She couldn't deny it any longer. The life she'd once cherished was slipping further out of reach, all because of one dark decision in a rainy Chicago afternoon. A week after returning from Chicago, Lauren found herself pacing around the kitchen, holding her phone in one hand, a wedding invitation in the other. The late morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the tension on her face. Spencer, dressed casually in jeans and a shirt, watched her from across the countertop. He set down his mug of coffee. "So, you want to fill me in on what's got you so wound up?" Lauren sighed. "Malcolm texted," she said quietly. "He says his younger sister Maria is getting married in Oak Park next month. He's inviting me. Well, us. Apparently she'd like me in the ceremony. Something about me being an old family friend." Spencer arched an eyebrow. He recalled Lauren once mentioning that Malcolm came from a tight-knit family. "Are you close with his sister?" "Not really," she admitted, glancing at the invitation. It bore intricate calligraphy reading. "The Malcolm family requests the pleasure of your company." She tapped her foot. "He claims she wants me there for sentimental reasons, like a nod to old school days. But I don't know." Spencer frowned. "Why would we go if you're not comfortable? We can skip it." Lauren bit her lip. She remembered the last time she'd gone to Oak Park alone. That was the start of all these mistakes. If she refused outright now, would that raise Spencer's suspicions even further? Because, despite his polite tone, she sensed an undercurrent of distrust. "Maybe it's best if we both go," she said slowly, "so it doesn't look strange. I can't exactly ignore them if Maria specifically asked me to be part of the wedding." Spencer studied her expression, then nodded. "All right, I'll rearrange my schedule. I just don't like the idea of you hanging out with Malcolm anymore. But if it's his sister's event, I'll manage." Relief and dread warred inside Lauren. She offered him a meek smile. "Thank you." 2 weeks later, they arrived in Oak Park on a crisp Friday afternoon. The wedding would be held at a Victorian-style estate. The evening before, they joined the small rehearsal dinner in the estate's garden. Soft lights dangled from overhead branches, while a light breeze carried the scent of roses. Lauren wore a modest cocktail dress, trying to blend in. Malcolm, in a dark suit, flitted around greeting guests. Every so often, Lauren felt his gaze. She avoided eye contact, clinging to Spencer's side whenever possible. They exchanged pleasantries with various family members. Malcolm's sister, Maria, approached with a polite smile. She was radiant and gracious, her fiancé at her elbow. "Lauren, I'm so happy you're here," Maria said, hugging her briefly. "I know we weren't super close in high school, but Malcolm always said you were important to him. It means a lot that you came." Lauren forced a polite laugh, feeling Spencer's hand lightly touch her back. "I'm honored to be included." Maria explained a few details about the wedding ceremony, where Lauren might stand, how the introductions would go. Lauren nodded along, heart thumping at the thought of standing up there while Spencer watched, and Malcolm lurked somewhere in the background. Later that night, in their hotel room, Spencer asked in a subdued tone, "You good? This is a lot to take in." Lauren forced a reassuring smile. "I'm fine. Just want to support Maria. We'll get through tomorrow, then head home." She tried ignoring the pang of guilt twisting in her chest. If only she could bury the past entirely. Yet as the hours ticked by, a sense of impending doom settled over them both, thick as the midnight clouds drifting past the hotel window. The wedding day dawned bright, the mid-morning sun casting warm light across the estate's gardens. Musicians rehearsed classical tunes inside the ornate hall. Guests in pastel suits and dresses milled around the lawn, sipping fruit-infused water, exchanging pleasantries. Spencer had a camera slung around his neck, courtesy of Maria, who'd asked if he would capture some candid shots of the preparations. He'd agreed, hoping it would occupy his mind and keep an eye on Lauren at the same time. She was off in a side chamber with the other wedding participants. Meanwhile, Malcolm wandered between family clusters, offering charming smiles, checking last-minute details, but every so often Spencer caught him glancing toward the chamber where Lauren was supposed to be. A sour taste filled Spencer's mouth each time. Finally, the ceremony began at noon. Maria glided down a rose-petaled aisle under a canopy of white blossoms. Lauren stood among the bridal party, wearing a flowing pale blue dress that did little to ease her nerves. She forced a calm expression, ignoring Malcolm's presence on the groom's side. Across the aisle, Spencer lifted his camera, snapping a few shots of the bride's radiant entrance. Vows were exchanged, applause erupted, and a shower of flower petals marked the couple's first kiss. Relief flickered through Lauren's heart. She'd gotten through the formalities without incident, or so she hoped. The reception soon followed in a spacious ballroom on the estate's second floor. Spencer took photos while waiters served champagne. Lauren made herself helpful, guiding guests to their seats. She was busy enough to almost forget her tension. Almost. Halfway through, Spencer realized he'd left his spare memory card in the trunk of their rental car. With the dancing portion of the reception approaching, he needed more storage space. He told Lauren softly, "I'll be right back. Gotta grab my backup card." She nodded, half occupied by handing out small favors. "Hurry back, okay?" Stepping outside, Spencer walked along a short path toward the parking area. The crisp midday light made everything feel deceptively cheerful. Yet an unease lingered in his chest, he couldn't quite place why. After retrieving the memory card, he re-entered the grand foyer. That was when he noticed Lauren was no longer among the crowd in the ballroom. He asked a passing relative, "Have you seen Lauren?" The man shrugged. "Think I saw her head upstairs? Maybe with Malcolm?" He wandered off to find more appetizers. A spike of anxiety shot through Spencer. He clutched his camera strap, recalling the uneasy suspicion that had followed him from Chicago. The faint strains of music drifted from below as he climbed the elaborate staircase, each step echoing ominously against polished wood. He followed a corridor, noticing the hush that fell away from the main event. The hallway was lined with antique portraits, the floor muffled by a plush crimson carpet. At the far end, he heard hushed voices behind a partly open door. One belonged to Lauren, another to Malcolm. Spencer's heart pounded in his ears just as it had in that very first chapter of this story. The memory card in his fingers felt suddenly useless. He took a shaky breath, pushing the door open a few more inches. Time seemed to slow. Lauren stood near an ornate sofa, her dress slightly disheveled. Malcolm's hand was on her waist, his face too close to hers. The tension in the air crackled an unmistakable closeness that spoke of something intimate. Spencer's mind reeled. It was the horrifying flashback to his worst fear realized. The camera slipped from his hand, landing on the carpet with a muffled thud. Malcolm jerked his head up, eyes colliding with Spencer's. Lauren spun around, color draining from her face. For an instant, no one spoke. Then Spencer's chest constricted, and the corridor spun around him. He turned on his heel, stumbling back the way he'd come. Lauren's voice rang out faintly, "Spencer, wait!" But the roaring in his ears drowned everything else. Down the stairs he fled, away from the swirling violins, away from the betrayal burned into his mind. Lauren rushed after Spencer, her heels clattering on the staircase, but he was already in the foyer by the time she reached the landing. Guests in pastel outfits looked over curiously, half lost in the post-wedding merriment. She tried calling out, "Spencer!" but her voice cracked in the large open space. At the front entrance, Spencer yanked open the heavy wooden door, letting bright sunlight spill into the dim foyer. He strode briskly across the gravel driveway. Outside, the music from inside was muted, replaced by the soft chirping of birds and the distant hum of traffic on a nearby road. Desperate, Lauren picked up her skirt and followed. The gravel shifted underfoot, slowing her. "Spencer!" she cried again, tears stinging her eyes. She glimpsed him heading for the walkway beyond the estate's gate, ignoring the valet station. The tension in his shoulders spoke volumes of rage and sorrow. Before she could catch up, he turned a corner. By the time she reached the estate's iron gates, he'd vanished from sight, leaving only the swirl of dust behind him. Breath-hitching, Lauren fumbled for her phone, calling his number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again, same result. Trembling, she stood at the gate, wedding guests occasionally passing behind her to retrieve belongings or make phone calls. None asked if she was okay. She was just another figure in formal wear, overshadowed by the joyous couple inside. Eventually, she retreated to the estate's side lawn, out of the line of curious gazes. Malcolm approached slowly, wearing a look of feigned concern. "Lauren, sorry if things got out of hand." She glared, eyes brimming with anger and panic. "You never cared about the consequences, did you?" He gave a nonchalant shrug. "I invited you because my sister asked. If you can't handle the tension, that's on you. You followed me upstairs." "No!" she burst out. "I went to check something for Maria. You cornered me, Malcolm. I should have walked away." Tears threatened to spill. She turned her back on him, hugging herself. "I might have lost Spencer for good." He placed a hand on her shoulder. She jerked away violently. "Don't touch me." In the distance, the music continued, oblivious to her turmoil. After a taut pause, Malcolm's voice lowered. "Look, if Spencer's leaving, stay with me for a while. You're upset. We can talk it out." "Stay with you?" She almost laughed at the audacity. You think that's a solution? Her voice dropped, heavy with disgust. Don't you get it? I'm not throwing away my marriage for you. He frowned, looking momentarily stung, then forced his features into indifference. Do what you want, but don't blame me entirely for this. You played along. With that, he walked back toward the estate, as though the entire fiasco were a mere inconvenience. Lauren stood there numb, the sun beating down on her bare shoulders. She tried calling Spencer again. Nothing. She pictured him finding the nearest train station or maybe calling a rideshare to escape. Her heart pounded with despair. Finally, she retreated to a quiet alcove near some flowering shrubs, searching in vain for messages from Spencer. He'd blocked her or turned off his phone. One by one, guests began leaving, the wedding reaching its final hours. She only moved from her spot when Maria spotted her with worry in her eyes. "Lauren, are you okay? Did something happen?" Lauren managed a weak smile to protect Maria's big day. "Just a personal emergency," she whispered, tears threatening. "I have to go soon. I'm so sorry." Maria hugged her gently, clueless about the real cause, only sensing the heartbreak. "Take care, okay?" Lauren nodded, stifling sobs. She slipped away from the festivities, the once charming estate now a battleground of painful memories. Outside, she dialed for a taxi, hands trembling. As the car pulled up, she realized she had no idea where Spencer was, whether he'd left Oak Park entirely or if he'd returned to Atlanta without her. With a shaky breath, she climbed into the taxi, cradling her phone as though it held a lifeline. Her mind spun with regrets, replaying the moment she'd first welcomed Malcolm back into her life. If only could echo forever, but it changed nothing. Sunday morning found Lauren on a train heading back to Atlanta alone. She'd tried all night to reach Spencer, to no avail. Her eyes were red from crying, her thoughts scattered. Arriving in Atlanta station, she clutched her overnight bag and hailed a cab home, half hoping she'd find him there, waiting. But when she unlocked the door to their condo, an eerie stillness greeted her. The living room was spotless, as though no one had lived in it for days. A note lay on the kitchen table, folded neatly. With trembling fingers, she opened it. "Lauren, I don't know what to say. I'm leaving for Phoenix. Donovan needs me on a project. I transferred half our joint savings to a separate account. You can keep the rest. I can't stay here right now. Don't bother calling. I need space." Spencer, her knees buckled, and she sank into a chair. He's really gone," she whispered, tears burning her cheeks. She checked the bedroom. His clothes were missing. Drawers stood half empty. The hamper in the corner was gone, too. A wave of panic washed over her as she realized how meticulously he'd cleared his personal effects. She dialed his number voicemail, sent a text undelivered. He had cut off every line of communication. Surging desperation made her try emailing him, only to see a bounce-back error from a newly changed email address. The final blow landed when she checked their bank account. Half was gone, as the note had said. Exhausted, she dropped onto the living room couch, eyes fixed on the silent walls that once held such warmth. In a blur of heartbreak, she replayed the chain of events that led to this moment: the cabs, the hush of a parked car in Chicago, the wedding confrontation. It felt like a tragic script she couldn't rewrite. Days turned into a restless haze. She called Spencer's old friend Miles, who only responded, "I have no idea where he is, Lauren. He's not answering me either." She tried Donovan's office, but the receptionist said Spencer was unavailable on a remote assignment. No further details. Every time her phone buzzed, a wild hope flared that it might be him. But it never was just random spam or a coworker asking about a design consultation. Eventually, she found herself curled up in bed for hours, ignoring mealtimes and messages alike. One late evening, she mustered enough strength to stand at the window, gazing out at the city lights. She felt hollow, as though part of her had fled with Spencer. "I did this," she thought, anger battling despair. "I drove him away." At last, in a moment of clarity, she opened her laptop and wrote a raw, heartfelt email to Spencer's old address, knowing it might bounce back again. She poured out a stream of apologies, regrets, pleas for him to at least speak to her. When she hit send, it indeed bounced back, but the act of writing gave her a meager outlet for the swirling guilt. Lauren realized the horrifying truth. She was now alone in the condo that once felt like home. Spencer was across the country, perhaps forging a new life without her. And if he ever returned, would he even want to see her? She stared at the silent walls again, tears falling unchecked. She had no answers, only emptiness and a persistent ache in her chest. That was the price of betrayal, a hollow echo in place of the person she loved most. A hot, relentless sun bore down on the streets of Phoenix, reflecting off the glass-walled corporate buildings that dominated downtown. Spencer stepped into the office tower that served as his temporary workplace, determined to hide his emotional state behind a polite nod and firm handshake. He'd arrived in town a month ago at Donovan's request to manage a critical engineering project. Outwardly, he was focused, professional. Inwardly, he seethed with unresolved anger. He rented a modest, furnished apartment not far from the office. At night, surrounded by impersonal beige walls and a half-empty fridge, Spencer would nurse a silent fury at the betrayal he'd witnessed in Oak Park. Each time he glanced at his phone, the memory of Lauren with Malcolm cut him like broken glass. Voicemails from her went unplayed. Texts and emails from her lay ignored. He was done being the forgiving husband who'd been deceived. It was one night, after finishing a video conference with Donovan, that he finally took the next step. He remembered Malcolm bragging once about how convenient it was to keep everything in my personal email so no one at work would bother me. A cunning idea began to form. If Malcolm's arrogance included sloppy digital security, perhaps Spencer could find damaging information to use against him. Focusing intently on his laptop, Spencer methodically searched for old references to Malcolm's email addresses from years past, some from social media, some gleaned from mutual acquaintances. His earlier experiences in the military taught him a few stealthy tactics for sifting data and bypassing weak security. After a couple of attempts, he struck gold. One of Malcolm's accounts used a laughably simple password. Spencer stared at the screen, adrenaline surging. He was in. Malcolm's inbox was cluttered with messages from various acquaintances, some referencing short-lived flings, others containing mocking jibes about people he considered inferior. Spencer skimmed them, disgusted yet oddly validated. This man truly was as vile as Spencer had suspected. Then came an email thread titled Wedding Plans. Opening it, Spencer discovered a chain of messages between Malcolm and a woman named Harriet, apparently the daughter of a high-powered executive in Chicago. Harriet was planning a lavish ceremony with Malcolm for the following spring. The banter was friendly on her side, but Malcolm's replies, in separate threads to his buddies, revealed his real intentions. Harriet's father practically runs half the city. Once I marry her, I'll have a direct line to big contracts. Easy living. Don't worry about Harriet's clinginess. I can handle it. The payoff is worth a bit of pretending. Spencer felt a sick satisfaction reading these. Malcolm was attempting to con Harriet and her influential family. But it didn't stop there. Further down, Spencer found more threads. Her old man's clueless. I'll be set for life if I play this right. The wedding's just a stepping stone. And in a separate chain with one of Malcolm's drinking buddies, Spencer's own name appeared. That loser, Spencer? He won't bother me again. I wrecked his marriage. He's probably off sulking somewhere. Good riddance. The final blow came from an exchange detailing the women Malcolm had conquered. He listed Lauren among them, describing the affair in degrading, triumphant terms. Spencer's jaw tightened with fury. For a moment, he had to step away from his laptop, forcing himself to breathe. Returning to the screen, he methodically saved every incriminating email. Harriet's personal address, her father's contact, the wedding date, plus Malcolm's vile commentary. Spencer paused to consider what he was doing. This wasn't just about humiliating Malcolm. This was about justice, about making sure the man who destroyed his marriage didn't waltz into a new life unscathed. Night fell over Phoenix, the desert sky turning a dusky purple. Spencer sat in the glow of his desk lamp, eyes gritty from hours of reading and saving emails. He shut the laptop, feeling an odd calm settle in. Malcolm's day of reckoning was near. For the first time in months, Spencer almost smiled. A week later, Spencer carefully composed a set of anonymous emails. In them, he attached screenshots and forwarded messages, Malcolm's callous statements about Harriet, his mockery of her father, and even a handful of lecherous bragging emails about other women. Spencer labored over each detail, verifying he left no digital footprints that could trace back to him. Then, with one decisive click, he sent them to Harriet, her father, and the executive team at Malcolm's company. He leaned back in his office chair, heart pounding. A thin film of sweat coated his palms. There's no turning back now, he thought. He spent the next few days immersed in work tasks, waiting for the fallout. By the third evening, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to a frantic message. "Spencer, it's Harriet's father. I don't know how you got this information, but my daughter's fiancé is an absolute fraud. Thank you for warning us. I'd like to speak with you in person. Please call me back." Spencer didn't call him. The message alone confirmed that his plan had worked. He later scanned local business news. Rumors emerged that Malcolm had been fired for gross misconduct. Harriet, heartbreakingly humiliated, had evidently canceled the wedding. Spencer pictured Malcolm desperately trying to salvage his reputation as corporate doors slammed shut in his face. One afternoon, Spencer peeked back into Malcolm's email account. The inbox was a frenzy, harsh demands from Harriet's father, outraged messages from Malcolm's ex-friends, and a torrent of curses from Malcolm himself. "Whoever did this, you're dead," he wrote in one. "You've ruined my life." Spencer watched it all, expressionless. Simultaneously, he kept an eye on any messages from Lauren. She continued emailing him, though typically with subject lines like, "Please, we need to talk," or "I'm sorry." He never opened them, just saw her name in the inbox and moved on. She had no clue what he was orchestrating from afar. One late night, he glimpsed a new message. "Please pick up the phone. I'm worried about you." It was from Lauren. A flicker of guilt ran through him. He'd made no direct contact since walking out, but his anger was still raw, overshadowing any sliver of pity. He deleted the email without reading further. Back in the corporate world, Donovan, oblivious to Spencer's personal vendetta, congratulated him on handling the project so smoothly. Spencer nodded, politely deflecting praise. If only Donovan knew the real reason for his late nights and steely focus. Within days, word spread that Malcolm's engagement was officially off. Harriet, guided by her father, had publicly denounced him. Malcolm's social media accounts flared with comments from enraged acquaintances. Photos of him partying with questionable figures surfaced, damaging him further. Spencer watched from the shadows. Each new piece of Malcolm's downfall brought a grim sense of satisfaction, like a slow vengeance for the heartbreak he'd endured. Yet beneath that satisfaction, a hollow ache remained. No matter how thoroughly he ruined Malcolm, he couldn't erase the betrayal that shattered his marriage. By the end of the second week, Malcolm had effectively lost his job, his fiancée, and his shining future. Spencer closed his laptop one evening, heart pounding in his chest. Stage 1, complete. Now all that remained was to see how Lauren would respond to the chaos swirling around Malcolm. Perhaps she'd finally realize what a toxic man she'd chosen. Back in Atlanta, Lauren sat on the couch in their once cozy condo, scanning articles on her phone. She stumbled on a local business journal from Chicago, an expose about Malcolm's sudden downfall. Engagement with Harriet Grayson canceled. Allegations of fraud. Lauren's eyes widened. She read the piece twice, breath catching at every line. It mentioned leaked emails revealing Malcolm's manipulative intentions. Harriet's father had severed all ties, and Malcolm's company had fired him for gross misconduct. Lauren felt a jolt of shock. Malcolm, the man she'd risked everything for, was a complete liar, using marriage as a business ladder. She trembled, recalling how he'd bragged about getting ahead, not once mentioning genuine love or respect. Simultaneously, the emptiness in her home gnawed at her. Spencer's presence was long gone. He was still in Phoenix, ignoring her every attempt at contact. Each morning she wrote him lengthy emails, confessing her regret, asking for a chance to explain. No response came. She left voicemails that went unacknowledged. She texted Miles for updates, but Miles only knew that Spencer was working like a machine, refusing to talk about anything else. Lauren found herself battling a swirl of guilt, shame, and desperation. She realized how Malcolm had manipulated her, stoking excitement and nostalgia. It had all been a lie. She recalled his smug grin, the way he'd coaxed her into that humiliating first kiss, and the fleeting thrill she'd mistaken for something real. Now it was laid bare. Malcolm had never truly cared. and in succumbing to him, she'd destroyed her marriage. Work, once a refuge, now felt exhausting. She'd sit at her desk designing layouts for office spaces, but her creativity was sapped. Her boss noticed the drop in performance, privately asking if everything was all right at home. Lauren managed a vague nod, tears threatening. She couldn't even articulate the magnitude of her mistake. Nights brought the worst torment. She'd lie in bed, recalling how Spencer used to talk about their future, maybe buy a bigger house, maybe adopt a dog, all illusions now. She pictured him alone in Phoenix, cold with anger. The memory of their last meeting, the anguish in his eyes haunted her. She had no one to blame but herself. A single glimmer of hope remained, that Spencer might eventually relent, pick up the phone, or come home. In her darkest moments, she tried to imagine forging a new life if he never returned, but that future seemed unbearably bleak. The condo felt like a silent tomb, filled with echoes of better days. One afternoon, her phone buzzed. Heart leaping, she saw an unknown number. She answered in a rush, "Hello?" But it was a realtor offering to buy their condo, referencing a generic listing site. She ended the call, tears slipping down her cheeks. Even telemarketers had more to say to her than Spencer did. Reading about Malcolm's continued disgrace, some tabloids claimed he'd lost an apartment lease brought no relief. She felt only a hollow sense of irony. The man she'd betrayed her husband for was paying for his sins, yet she'd lost everything in the process. She typed another email to Spencer that night, short and imploring. "Please, I'm so sorry. I know you hate me, but talk to me. I beg you." She pressed send, doubtful it would reach his eyes. Days turned into weeks. Lauren's world narrowed to work, an empty condo, and fruitless attempts to reconcile. Each evening she checked her inbox, hoping for even one word from Spencer. None came. She began to wonder if he'd ever truly come back, and if he did, whether there was any chance of rebuilding the life they once had. Almost 3 months had passed since Spencer had vanished to Phoenix. His project for Donovan was nearing completion, giving him no further reason to remain in Arizona. He returned to Atlanta unannounced, late on a Friday, stepping off a plane into warm, humid air. He'd told no one except Miles of his arrival, intent on reclaiming his space on his own terms. Lauren was pacing in the living room when the door clicked open. She froze at the sight of him standing there in a light jacket, a small suitcase in hand. Dark circles rimmed his eyes and his posture was tense, as though bracing for impact. "Spencer," she breathed, tears already forming. "You're here." He set down his suitcase and scanned the condo. It felt both familiar and alien. The furniture was exactly as he remembered, but the warmth was gone. "I came back because I'm done in Phoenix," he said curtly. She approached cautiously, heart pounding. I've been trying to reach you," she stammered. "I wanted to explain—" He cut her off with an icy glare. "Explain what? That you lied, cheated, humiliated me?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a battered envelope. "I know everything, Lauren. I saw emails, your exchanges with Malcolm. I saw the boasting. Did you think you could hide it forever?" She trembled, words failing. Spencer glanced around the living room that once felt like home, then back at her. "You destroyed my trust," he continued, voice cracking with suppressed pain. "But that's not all. I also know Malcolm's done for. I had a hand in that." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" He gave a dismissive shrug. "He wanted to marry Harriet for her father's power. I made sure that didn't happen. Now he's out of work, alone like he left me." The bitterness in his tone was unmistakable. "And you? You sided with him. So you can't complain that your life fell apart too." Lauren swallowed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Spencer, I regret everything. I realize how he manipulated me, how I was selfish and naive. None of it was worth losing you." He stepped back, as though her mere proximity pained him. Pulling out a small flash drive, he tossed it on the coffee table. "On there are the photos, texts, everything from your fling. I kept them, as proof, I guess. No illusions anymore." She stared at the device, her face stricken. What do you want me to do?" He drew in a shaky breath. "I'm giving you a choice. Walk away or stay here on my terms. Don't think for a second I'm just going to welcome you back with open arms. I'll never trust you again without effort on your part. Anything, she whispered, voice quavering. I'll do anything. I love you. He snorted softly. Funny how love can vanish and reappear, he muttered, then paused, eyes glistening. But I'm not perfect either, Lauren. I still feel something for you. Let's call it leftover love or stupidity. I don't know. She reached out timidly, tears dripping onto her blouse. Let me prove I can earn your trust back. I beg you. A heavy silence draped the room. Spencer raked a hand through his hair, expression torn. Then we start from scratch if we start at all. You abide by my rules. Total honesty, no secrets. And don't you dare mention him again unless I ask. Got it? She nodded, sobbing. Yes, I swear. Spencer exhaled, turning away, voice still taut with anger. Fine. Let's see if your remorse means anything. But it's on my terms, Lauren. My terms. Their eyes met, a maelstrom of hurt, guilt, and a fragile spark of hope flickering in the subdued lamplight. Lauren realized they were at a precipice. Her fate and their marriage hung in the balance. Even so, she clung to a faint promise that maybe, just maybe, they could find a shard of forgiveness amid the shards of betrayal. A pale morning light filtered through the blinds in the living room, illuminating a scene that could have been cozy if not for the strained silence. Spencer sat at the dining table, scrolling through news on his phone, while Lauren, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, stood by the kitchen counter preparing toast and eggs. She glanced over her shoulder at him every few seconds, anxious for any sign of warmth. He barely looked up. Since returning from Phoenix, Spencer had maintained a guarded distance, neither fully shunning Lauren nor embracing her. He set up his laptop on the kitchen table most mornings, claiming it was easier to work from home. Yet the house felt anything but homey. Breakfast is ready, Lauren said softly, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs toward him. He nodded, mumbling thanks. He ate mechanically, gaze fixed on his screen. Lauren tried not to let her disappointment show. For weeks, she'd been doing everything she could making his favorite meals, ensuring the condo stayed spotless, even offering to run small errands that used to be his chore. None of it seemed to dent the icy barrier surrounding him. After breakfast, Spencer gathered his things to head into the office for an afternoon meeting. Lauren walked him to the door, heart pounding with the hope that maybe he'd give her a small goodbye kiss. Instead, he merely said, "I'll be back around 7, then slipped out. The door clicked shut with a finality that made her exhale shakily. In his absence, she tackled errands, laundry, tidying, refilling groceries. The routine tasks did little to mask her fear that time was running out, that eventually Spencer would decide she wasn't worth the pain. Sometimes, she caught him watching her with a torn expression, as if waging an inner battle between old affection and deep resentment. That evening, she prepared a simple pasta dinner. When Spencer returned, he cast a cursory glance at the dish and nodded in polite appreciation. They ate in near silence. Finally, Lauren mustered the courage to speak. "How's the project going?" she asked, forcing a light tone. He shrugged. "It's all right. Donovan wants me on a new job in a few months, but I haven't decided yet." "That's good," she ventured, hoping to prolong any conversation. "Means they trust your skills." He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at her with guarded eyes. "How's work for you?" he asked, surprising her. She fumbled for words. "It's fine. My boss noticed I've been distracted, but I'm trying to stay focused, I guess. The best I can." Spencer set his fork down. "Look, I'm not trying to make your life hell," he said quietly. "But my anger doesn't just vanish. I come home and still see the condo we shared when everything was okay, and now—" He trailed off, frustration tensing his jaw. Lauren's eyes brimmed with tears. "I know I can't fix the past. I just need you to see I'm committed to making things right, however long it takes." He pressed his lips into a thin line, not fully convinced. After dinner, he retreated to the bedroom, leaving Lauren to clean up plates. She sighed, gaze drifting over the photo on the wall from their happier days smiling on a Florida beach. Now, it felt like that photo belonged to an entirely different couple. A week later, late afternoon clouds rolled in, threatening a spring downpour. Lauren was driving back from an errand on the outskirts of Atlanta, a design consultation her boss had scheduled. She felt a flutter of hope, thinking that if she landed this new client, it might ease the financial strain. More importantly, it might show Spencer she was still capable, worth respecting. Rain began to spatter the windshield. She turned on the wipers, navigating carefully along a busy road. The gray sky grew darker by the minute, and traffic slowed. Distracted by the radio's weather report warning of sudden downpours, she almost missed the car swerving into her lane. Her heart lurched. She slammed the brakes, but the tires skidded on wet pavement. Headlights flashed in her peripheral vision, another car behind her honking frantically. She felt a sickening jolt as the front bumper collided with a guardrail. The impact rattled through her bones, the seatbelt digging into her shoulder. Glass cracked somewhere to her right. When everything went still, she realized the airbag hadn't deployed, luckily. The collision was more of a glancing blow than a head-on crash. Trembling, she fumbled for her phone. Her chest hurt, likely bruised by the seatbelt. Darkness pressed at the edges of her vision, but she fought it off, calling 911 first. Then, with unsteady fingers, she dialed Spencer. He answered on the second ring, sounding impatient. "Yeah?" "Spencer," she croaked, voice trembling. I had an accident. I'm on Oak Ridge Parkway near exit 14. I think I'm okay, but I'm so scared." She heard him suck in a sharp breath. "What? Are you hurt? I'm coming. Stay on the line, okay?" Relief flooded her. Maybe he'd brush her off. But no, he sounded alarmed, worried. She tried to answer, but paramedics arrived, instructing her to stay still. The phone slipped from her grasp as dizziness overcame her. What felt like moments later, she blinked groggily to find herself sitting on the curb, an EMT shining a small flashlight in her eyes. Rain drizzled, tapping softly on the collapsed hood of her car. Spencer's footsteps approached rapidly, and then he was there, crouching beside her, eyes wide with concern. "Lauren," he said, voice taut. "God, are you all right?" Tears spilled as she nodded, wincing at a pain in her shoulder. "I think so, mostly shaken." He turned to the EMT. "She gonna be fine?" The medic nodded. "She's stable. Might have some bruising, but no serious injury. We'll run a check at the hospital just in case." Lauren let out a shaky exhale. Spencer hovered protectively, not caring about the rain soaking his hair. In that moment, the anger in his eyes was replaced by sheer worry. He gently brushed wet strands from her face. "Don't scare me like that," he whispered. Her heart twisted at the hint of genuine warmth. Paramedics helped her onto a stretcher, preparing to transport her for a quick exam. Spencer insisted on riding along, ignoring the perplexed glances of onlookers. The ambulance doors closed, sealing them together in the glaring fluorescent light. For once, the tension that plagued them daily lifted. All that mattered was that Lauren was safe, and Spencer still cared enough to drop everything when she needed him. 2 days after the accident, Lauren was home on doctor's orders to rest a strained muscle in her shoulder. The condo was quieter than ever, but at least Spencer was there, working from the living room. Occasionally, he checked in on her, offering water or asking if she needed pain medication. She tried not to interpret his attentiveness as more than concern, yet she welcomed even this small display of care. Mid-afternoon, she hobbled into the living room, holding her shoulder gingerly. He glanced up from his laptop, eyes flicking with mild alarm. "You need to be resting," he said, not unkindly. "I just wanted to talk," she said, voice hesitant. "About what happened?" Spencer sighed, shutting his laptop. "Which part? The accident or the rest of our messed up lives?" She managed a faint, humorless smile. "All of it, I guess." I realized. "When the car spun out, my mind flashed to you. I thought I can't die without telling him how sorry I am." He leaned back, tension in his posture. "I never wanted you hurt, Lauren," he said softly. "My anger was always about what you did, not about wishing you any harm." She lowered herself onto the couch with a wince, heart pounding. "I know, and I know I've apologized 100 times, but I need to explain something deeper. I never set out to ruin us. Malcolm was a piece of my past, and I got swept up in some fantasy, feeling restless. I thought maybe I was missing out on something, but it was a lie, and I realized too late that I'd thrown away the one real thing I had. You. Spencer's jaw worked silently. He looked at his hands, then back at her. I get that you made a mistake, but it wasn't just a slip, it was months of lying and covering it up. You destroyed the trust that kept me going. Tears gathered in Lauren's eyes. That's what kills me. I know I have to earn your trust back. I'm not naive enough to think it'll be quick or easy. A hush fell between them, broken only by the hum of the air conditioner. Finally, Spencer exhaled. When I saw your car wrecked, I just kept thinking, don't let her be gone. Not like this. It scared me how much that affected me. She reached out, placing her hand lightly over his. He allowed it, though he didn't lace his fingers with hers. I love you, Spencer. Despite everything, that's never faded for me. His eyes glistened. I still feel something too, he murmured, voice wavering. But the hurt is like a permanent scar. I'm not sure if love is enough to cover it. Lauren's tears slipped free. We can try. Maybe we see a counselor or talk about boundaries. I'll do anything, truly. He swallowed thickly, nodding once. All right, we can try. But let's be clear. One more betrayal, I'm done. Understand? She squeezed his hand. I promise, she whispered. I won't give up on us. A month of careful rebuilding passed. Under the guidance of a marriage counselor recommended by Miles, Spencer and Lauren began the painstaking process of healing old wounds. Their sessions were uncomfortable, filled with admissions of shame, guilt, and lingering anger. Yet each time they emerged feeling a small measure of relief, as if they'd scraped away another layer of bitterness. They also worked on practical routines. Lauren installed a shared calendar app so Spencer could see every appointment she had. Spencer agreed to share updates about his new project offers, letting her in on his decisions. It was a fragile equilibrium, but it felt more collaborative than anything in recent months. One mild Saturday morning, they decided to take a short trip out of the city. Nothing extravagant, just a nearby state park with a gentle hiking trail and a scenic overlook. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the fresh air felt like a balm to their strained souls. Walking up the trail, Lauren was mindful of her still sore shoulder, but the sunshine and birdsong buoyed her spirits. Spencer walked beside her, quiet but not distant. Occasionally he'd point out a cluster of wildflowers or mention a memory from their early days together. She responded with a soft smile, grateful for any glimpse of normalcy. At the overlook, they stood side by side, gazing out at rolling hills covered in spring greenery. A breeze whispered through the trees. Lauren found herself slipping her hand into Spencer's. This time, he didn't pull away. Instead, he gave her fingers a tentative squeeze, acknowledging the moment without words. They lingered there, soaking up the view. Eventually, Lauren spoke, voice hushed. I know we're not back to perfect, but I'm hopeful. Are you? Spencer inhaled deeply, eyes on the horizon. Hopeful, yeah, he said slowly. Still scared, still unsure, but something inside me is telling me not to give up. She looked up at him, tears of a different kind gathering now, tears of cautious joy. Whatever it takes, we'll face it together, if you're willing. He turned to meet her gaze. I am, he said, voice thick with emotion. Then he let go of her hand, only to slip an arm gently around her shoulders, pulling her closer. In the distance, birds called and sunlight bathed the landscape in gold. The two stood quietly, neither guaranteeing a perfect resolution nor pretending the past had vanished. But in their joined stance, there was a fragile sense of peace and the unmistakable promise of trying again.